In 2025, a dark fantasy novel titled Alchemised began appearing everywhere, on TikTok, in magazine reviews, across bookstore displays, and even in major news headlines. For many, including me, this book came out of nowhere. One day I just stepped into the bookstore and bam, a huge display of Alchemized. Bunch of books dedicated to this debut novel of an unknown author. In the social networks, I saw that they were full of excitement of people waiting for the release of this novel, waiting to read this book, waiting to leave their comments. And for us, it was just weird that this new novel came already with a huge and loyal fan base. And how could a debut novel by an unknown author arrive carrying such an enormous and loyal following? The truth is, Alchemized was already famous long before most people had ever heard of it, just not in the traditional literary world. Alchemized is the first official published work by SenLinYu, a name that had already reached legendary status within the digital corners of the Harry Potter fandom. Before it was a Penguin Random House release, it was a fanfiction titled Manaclet, an alternate universe retelling in which Hermione Granger becomes a prisoner of war and Draco Malfoy her captor. Dark, complex, and emotionally devastating, the story amassed millions of reads on Archive of Our Own, AO3, and became a myth within the Hermione community. For years, Manaclet circulated as a kind of open secret, the fanfic that everyone whispered about but few dared to finish, accompanied by content warnings and chapters of formidable length. Then, in 2024, an unexpected wave began. BookTok users started posting reaction videos, tears, analysis, fan art. What had once been a forbidden story in a small corner of the internet went viral among readers who had never even heard of AO3. When the phenomenon reached its peak, SenLinYu decided to take the next step, to do the necessary rewrite of Manaclet into an original, publishable novel. That's how Alchemized was born. The author, who is SenLinYu? SenLinYu, simply known as Sen, is an American writer born and raised in Oregon near Portland. On her mother's side, she is of Japanese descent, and her family history is marked by the trauma of Japanese-American internment camps during World War II, an inherited experience that deeply shaped Sen's interest in themes of war, memory, and oppression. She grew up in a conservative religious household, homeschooled, and with little access to fantasy books, which made imagination itself a quiet form of rebellion. Years later, during the naps of her first child, Sen began writing Manaclet in the Notes app on her phone, never imagining that those secret drafts would grow into one of the most talked about fanfics of the decade. Today, she lives a calm life in Oregon with her 2 children, balancing everyday familial life with a background in classical arts and culture, an influence that gives her writing its distinct mix of epic scale and tragic depth. Starting in 2018, SenLinYu began posting stories on fanfiction platforms, quickly earning a reputation within the massive Harry Potter fandom, especially in the Hermione subgenre, which explores a romantic or emotional connection between Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger. Her writing stood out for its dark tone and emotional depth, the kind of prose that felt more like literary fiction than fan work, and soon Sen's name became something of a quiet legend among readers. Outside the wizarding world, Sen also experimented with Star Wars fanfiction and smaller fandoms, always drawn to stories filled with tragedy, reflection, and moral conflict. Then, in 2025, she announced that Manaclet, her most iconic and widely read story, would be removed from AO3 to make way for its next chapter, Alchemized, her first traditionally published and fully original novel, a reimagined version that rose from the ashes of the fanfiction that started it all. The platform where it all began, Archive of Our Own, AO3. To understand Alchemized, one must return to where it all started, Archive of Our Own, AO3, the digital home of Manaclet and thousands of stories that redefine community-based writing. AO3 is a non-profit platform managed by the Organization for Transformative Works, a fan-created website dedicated to protecting and celebrating fanfiction. Conceived in 2008 and launched in 2009, AO3 was designed as a democratic open space for fanfiction, a place where anyone could publish, comment, tag, translate, or even remix the work of others, all within a framework of respect and collaboration. Unlike commercial sites, AO3 allows explicit or thematically extreme content, anything from eroticism to violence to psychological horror, always governed by detailed content warnings and rating systems meant to protect both author and reader. Its community functions like a self-regulating ecosystem, built on shared ethics, collective moderation, and a give economic philosophy. Stories are freely shared, never monetized, as acts of creative generosity. Readers can leave kudos, the equivalent of a like, comments or bookmarks, each interaction helping sustain the rhythm of the platform. Manaclet thrive in this open, uncensored environment, surviving on passion rather than profit, growing quietly into a phenomenon sustained entirely by its community. In 2019, AO3's cultural significance was formally recognized when it received a Hugo Award for Best Related Work, cementing its place as one of the most influential literary platforms of the digital era. Manaclet. Manaclet is one of the most talked about fanfictions in the Hermione world, but is nothing like a typical love story. It takes place in an alternate universe where Voldemort wins the war and Harry Potter is dead, turning the wizarding world into a dark, oppressive place ruled by violence, control, and forced breeding programs. In this brutal reality, Hermione is captured, her memory erased, and she's trapped in a cycle of psychological and physical torment. Draco, meanwhile, plays a complicated and disturbing role, sometimes her jailer, sometimes her protector, always walking a fine line between cruelty and care. Their connection isn't romantic in any traditional sense, it's intense, painful, and tragic. The story spans 77 chapters and more than 370,000 words, written between 2018 and 2019, and quietly grew into a huge phenomenon. Manaclet became one of the most recommended fanfictions in the fandom, inspiring fan art, translations, remixes, and endless discussions that spread far beyond the Harry Potter community. Its impact was so big that it got so many remixes, which are just more fanfictions of the fanfiction. It was becoming its own thing, its own reality. Many readers call it heartbreaking and said it left them thinking about the characters long after finishing. On TikTok, reaction videos and emotional posts helped it go viral, turning a niche fanfic into an internet sensation. But with that fame came controversy. Some readers criticized the story's graphic violence and depictions of abuse, saying it crossed moral lines. Others argue that the fanfic distorted beloved characters beyond recognition, which makes you wonder what's the point of taking beloved and existing characters that are already well represented and established and changing them so much that you entirely transform their essence. Are you taking just advantage of their popularity, or are you truly doing an homage to this world you supposedly love so much? Inside the fanfiction community, there was a debate about the pull-to-publish trend, that idea of turning free online works into commercial books, which some fans felt went against the spirit of fandom culture. Because the whole idea of this was just to write stories available for anybody to read without putting any price tag to them, but as soon as any story got any kind of popularity, the authors will take them, change them a little bit, and publish them so they could, monetize them. Things got even messier when people started selling unauthorized printed copies of Manaclet online, leading SenLinYu to publicly condemn the practice. Some people really care about this book, and they care about the book within the context of the Harry Potter world. They knew eventually it was going to be taken out and change the world around it, the characters, but they wanted to read the story of this Hermione Granger and this Draco Malfoy, with different names. But SenLinYu of course couldn't do that. She couldn't print these books and sell them because that would be against copyright law. But other people didn't care. They just grabbed the book, printed it themselves, and were selling it on Etsy and places like that, which, was taking advantage of SenLinYu and J.K. Rowling's work. When the author finally announced that Manaclet will be removed from AO3 to make space for its rewritten version, Alchemized, fans were devastated. For many, Manaclet wasn't just a story. It was a shared emotional journey and a piece of internet history that they weren't ready to let go. The transformation from Manaclet to Alchemized. To publish Alchemized as an official novel, SenLinYu had to face a major challenge: the copyright restrictions of the Harry Potter universe. Using its characters, settings, or lore would have violated intellectual property laws, so Sen made the bold choice to rebuild the story from the ground up. She described the process as taking two 5,000-piece puzzles and merging them into one that actually fits. The result was a complete transformation. Alchemized kept the emotional core of Manaclet, but everything else changed. Magic became alchemy and necromancy, and Hogwarts-like structures turned into corrupt guilds and political factions in a bleak but fully original world called Palladia. Hermione Granger was reborn as Helena Marino, an alchemist haunted by memory loss, while Draco Malfoy became Cain Ferron, a man of power and moral corrosion. The bright, familiar wizarding world was replaced by one steeped in dark science, rituals, and decay, giving the story a completely new identity. Core themes like memory, manipulation, war, and the ethics of power remain, but now they stood on their own, untied to J.K. Rowling's universe. Some scenes were softened, others expanded, and the narrative structure was reshaped so new readers could dive into Alchemized without ever knowing its fanfiction roots. When Manaclet was officially taken down from AO3 in 2025, it felt like the end of an era and the beginning of another. The moment a story born in the quiet corners of a fandom stepped fully into the global literary spotlight. Alchemized. In Alchemized, the world of Palladia has been left in ruins after a devastating war between alchemists and necromancers. It's a cruel and corrupt place, ruled by powerful families, secret guilds, and ritual sacrifices. Helena Marino, a talented but broken alchemist, is taken prisoner during the conflict, her memories scattered, her past buried beneath trauma. Cain Ferron, a man tied to that forgotten past, is assigned to interrogate her, to pull apart her mind, uncover her secrets, and perhaps destroy what's left of her. What begins as an act of control slowly turns into something far more complicated. A psychological struggle where power, trust, and desire blur together until it's no longer clear who's in control. As Palladia's faction fight for dominance, Helena becomes a pawn, a symbol, and maybe even a weapon. The story explores stark contrast, dark and light, life and death, salvation and ruin, pushing its characters to the moral edge of survival. Alchemized doesn't hold back. It's graphic, emotional, and deeply unsettling, filled with moments of violence, experimentation, and inner collapse. SenLinYu has said that readers often call it an emotionally shattering experience. And it's not really hard to find videos of people crying like crazy, like they just found out that chocolate went extinct. Sen has said that Alchemized was built like a triptych, 3 connected parts, each one reflecting a stage of transformation, coming together as a single portrait of both redemption and ruin. The writing itself is dark, poetic, and immersive, filled with sensory details, haunting metaphors of decay and rebirth, and a vocabulary completely unique to Palladia's world of alchemy. While many readers call it romantic fantasy, Sen makes it clear that this isn't a love story in the traditional sense. In Alchemized, love doesn't heal or save, it corrodes, consumes, and forces readers to ask whether the bond between the characters comes from compassion or simply the desperate instinct to survive together in a world that's already burning. Why did this phenomenon explode now? By the time Alchemised was announced, Manaclet already had millions of readers behind it, but things truly exploded when the story went viral on social media between 2023 and 2024. On TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, fans began sharing emotional reactions, before and after videos, and clips of its most heartbreaking moments, tiny bursts of emotion that pull new readers in instantly. For many people who had never touched fanfiction before, Manaclet became their entry point, a raw, powerful story that felt more intense and personal than many traditionally published books. What started as a small fandom obsession quickly turned into a global wave, driven by algorithms, word of mouth, and pure curiosity. Alchemist's move into traditional publishing was massive. Penguin Random House, through its Del Rey imprint, ordered 750,000 copies before the book even came out, an incredible number for a debut author. Around the same time, Legendary Entertainment bought the film rights in a deal reportedly worth 6 or 7 figures, setting the stage for the story to reach far beyond print. With these kind of numbers we're seeing here, it's safe to say that Alchemist is gonna make huge waves not only in the book industry, but also in movies, TV shows, and God knows spin-offs and stuff like that. The launch was carefully orchestrated. International marketing campaigns, translations in multiple languages, early copies sent to influencers and reviewers, and prominent placement on most anticipated books of the year lists. From day one, Alchemist wasn't presented as a former fanfiction project, it was positioned as the arrival of a major new voice in modern fantasy. Part of what makes Alchemist so compelling is its focus on war, memory, and trauma, forces that twist love, desire, and identity in unexpected ways. In a genre usually filled with clear-cut heroes and villains, SenLinYu chose to explore moral grayness, creating characters who are flawed, scarred, and constantly torn between right and wrong. Amid a wave of softer pastel-toned romantasy, Alchemist stood out for being raw, intense, and deeply human, a story that doesn't flinch away from pain or complexity. It also managed to connect two worlds. New readers who had never experienced fanfiction discovered how powerful and emotional this kind of storytelling could be, while longtime fanfic readers felt a sense of validation seeing a genre once dismissed as niche finally recognized and celebrated in the mainstream. The success of Alchemist also shows how much the literary world is changing. The pull-to-publish model, where digital fanfiction is rewritten and released as an official book, has become more common, stirring both excitement and controversy. Still, Alchemist stands out as one of the most successful and respected examples of that trend, proving that stories born online can thrive just as powerfully in traditional publishing. And in today's landscape, spaces like BookTok and Bookstagram hold incredibly sway, turning once niche works into viral sensations. Through emotional reviews, passionate debates, and waves of fan art, Alchemist grew beyond its origins. It became more than a book, it became a shared cultural moment. I don't want to ramble for too long, but I did have a few questions and opinions about the matter. For example, the fame this book got. My question regarding that is, if this novel Alchemist hadn't started as a fanfiction, a Harry Potter fanfiction, would it still have achieved this kind of popularity? Because one is one of the hardest things for a book to achieve, to get attention, marketing. Thousands of books get published every day. You have no freaking idea. A very, very little percentage is gonna caught people's attention. You're gonna, of course, you might say, but a lot of people who like Alchemist, who bought the book, read it, and are talking about it, they didn't even know this thing was a Harry Potter fanfiction or that it started as one. That's true. But people find out because of that, because the novel was already famous due to the fact that it was a fanfiction. The marketing was being done because it was a book related to Harry Potter, and as we have established, These things sell, franchises sell. We keep talking about how nothing is original anymore, that everything always belongs to a very popular and famous intellectual property. Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Harry Potter. This kind of feels a little bit of the same. Yeah, the book, Alchemised, or Manaclet that has started, is very different from the Harry Potter projects. But it jumped in its popularity wagon, you know what I mean? So when she wrote the book, people didn't arrive saying, who the hell is Helena Marino and Kane Farrell? No, these people are saying, wow, it's a dark romance between Hermione Granger and Draco Malfoy. And that's what caught people's attention at the beginning. Not a few, thousands of people. The thousands of people that made this book so popular. So popular that eventually it got published. And when it got published, all these other fans show its support in social media, and people that didn't know anything of the book got excited, saying, why is this, all these people talking about this book? There must be a reason. That's marketing, first of all. That's marketing. I've read reviews of people that didn't even like the book, that they said, I didn't like this book. I just read it because I saw it everywhere, because everybody kept talking about it. That's why I bought it. That's marketing. That means the marketing worked on you, you know? You got caught in the emotional wheel of the whole thing, on the nice cover, on the videos, on the music, you got caught on the emotional aspect of it. Maybe you didn't do your research, you didn't read anything else from the author, you just wanted to be part of this already established fandom, right? We like to be part of fandoms because it's already a community where you can share your opinions, your passions. That's why it's so hard for new books to come out, because nobody knows about them. What would I give a book I don't know anything about, with characters I don't know anything about, when I can jump into a world that I'm already familiar with? A Harry Potter kind of world, a Lord of the Rings kind of world, or Star Wars, all those stuff. I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not even questioning the quality of the novel, because to be fair, I haven't read it fully. So I'm not going to question it. It's not my cup of tea. It's not the kind of books I like, but I'm not going to question its quality. Besides, a lot of well-written books will never see the light of day, will never get the kind of attention, popularity, and fame this book got. I'm just questioning the way it got popular. In that, is it the way now that we're supposed to put our words out there? Is it better if you want to write a fantasy novel, write a Lord of the Rings fanfiction? It's gonna attract people because people are reading this kind of stuff. You don't have to convince anybody who Aragorn or Frodo is. They already are familiar with those names, so they're gonna be happy to read a story with those characters they already know in a world they like, they feel they're familiar with. So people are gonna jump in, and if it attracts enough people, you can then pull it out of the website and then publish it traditionally by changing a few things because it already has a fandom. Is this now the way of the literary world? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just asking. I'm just wondering. It's also, I feel, a shortcut, which I'm not gonna say is wrong. And I don't know about you guys, but if it had happened to me, I would have done the same. If I write a fan fiction and it gets popular, I'm gonna do the same. I also wanna live off my craft. I also wanna be a writer. I also wanna be in panels and sign copies and do book tours. Are you kidding me? That would be the dream. Of course I will do. So I'm not judging SenLinYu. I applaud her. I take my hat off to her. Congratulations and good fortune, good riddance. Good for you. But what about the rest of the world? How can we grab the attention of all these TikTok creators and all of these people that are now moving the industry, if it's not by creating a story in an already established universe? And as many people have pointed out, SenLinYu changed the essence of the characters in very deep levels. So she was not creating a side story of these characters. She was completely reinventing them. Pretty much, to what I feel, she was taking advantage of how popular and beloved they are by millions of people, not but a few, by millions. We grew up watching Harry Potter. So these characters feel special to us. When we read their names, we have this whole connection with our childhood. So I feel also you're just taking advantage a little bit of people's emotions and connections to these characters that you did not create, that you don't really have rights over them, and you change them entirely just to grasp people's attention, I feel. What do you think about it? What do you think about this whole thing? Have you read Alchemist? Did you like it? Would you recommend it? I will tell people, be careful on just jumping in the emotional wave of this thing. I know I'm talking about it, but because it fascinates me, the transition between fan fiction to one of the most popular books of the moment. It is very interesting to me. But what do you think about this whole thing? Do you support what she did, or do you understand the judgment the fan fiction community was putting on her a little bit? I do not judge her. Good for her. This is business. Thank you for watching and have a good day.